Nobody can prevent damages on their own. In every step of the design, installation, protection, and maintenance of underground utilities, there are people working diligently and innovatively to reduce damages. All these people need and deserve to have their stories told, which is what we do here at Planet Underground TV. Planet Underground TV is only made possible with the help of our sponsors: HBK Engineering and C-SCAN.
We're out here at 75th and South Shore Drive. We're doing some trenching. We're going around some fire hydrants that needed to be avoided for the bore shot, so our trench involves going out in the South Shore. So we saw cut yesterday, and today we're actually digging all the road. My pipe's getting stubbed under the curb line where they're actually going to be doing some bore shots, our 1 4-inch pipe that we're putting in. So I'll stub my pipe into a pit for the bore crew, and the bore crews will come out and drill theirs in and eventually tie into ours. With the drilling though, they have a lot of potholing to do due to the water services going to all the residents here. And they will be potholing every water service that the drill crew will be drilling either under or over, depending on the depth of those water services. So this job is for small cell nodes. There's actually a pole that was put up a few weeks ago by one of our local 9 crews at 74th Street, which is right over here. And our conduit will end up connecting into that pole for the small cell nodes, actually running all the way from 72nd all the way down to 76th, I believe. But there are numerous poles that went in for new small cell nodes and numerous manholes for the fiber build.
So basically, when there is trenching and boring within a job, our goal is to get the trenching crew out first so then they can open up what we call pits for the bore crews. So then the bore crews don't have to waste their time with that. So we'll stagger the bore crew behind. They'll already have their pits open. They'll come in their first day, start potholing all the utilities and establish their running line, and then they'll start boring. And then once they get to their next pit, we'll have the conduit or poly waiting for them to pull in, and they'll tie into what the trenching is already put in. Our trenching uses Schedule 40 PVC, it's straight sticks. The boring operation uses reels of poly. Then after we get that done, we'll typically put a 4-inch in for fiber, and then we'll have a crew come back. They'll install interduct, which is 2 1.25 inches, 1 1-inch, and our clients will then have us pull fiber in through one of those IDs, leaving the other 2 for future use. And then if the site requires power, we'll also install the power. For the most part, it's 2-inch. If it gets to a larger run, it'll be 4-inch, and that's what rises up to the poles. We'll have another crew come in, we'll take the pole out, and per CDOT, we have to install a new pole. They're engineered to hold the equipment, and we'll install the foundation. We'll have to come back after 2 days. We'll put the pole up. Once everything gets ran, the power, the fiber optics, then that's when we'll go back and install the equipment.
HBK has been designing small cell wireless nodes now for over 10 years, but we've definitely seen an increase of that type of design in the last 2 to 3 years, and it's even picking up more now with discussions about 4G now transitioning into 5G. What that generally means to us is that there'll be more sites that are closer spaced together. In other words, representing smaller umbrellas of wireless coverage in the 5G schema versus the 4G schema. For us, there's a number of challenges that we have to balance for the communications providers when we do our designs, to keep the installations efficient, to keep costs down, and to get the design through OUC coordination process. And then when we're running our alignments for the fiber or power connections that lead up to that pole, we're also having to balance our positioning in the roadway versus where the utilities that run along the curb are, for 2 reasons. One, we have to maintain the clearances on the utility off the curb, but we also have to, again, try to be mindful of the amount of pavement restoration that we're committing that communications provider to by placing that line further out into the roadway and impacting possibly more than one lane of traffic, or getting into 2 lanes of traffic, or crossing those lanes, and then committing that communications provider to half-width paving restoration, or possibly even a full-width paving restoration. So there's a lot to balance in terms of getting that installation done efficiently and smoothly.
When I showed up on site, the job was white line and all my locates were here. I haven't been on a job since I've worked here that hasn't been white line. And the Julies are usually always there, or the digger is always there. The foreman is responsible for checking his permit and his digger ticket to make sure when he shows up on site that he has a valid digger ticket. If you don't have a valid digger ticket, you can't put a saw in the ground, you can't put a shovel in the ground, nothing without that valid digger ticket from digger or 811 Julie. The bore crew, once they get their pipe in, my pipe is stubbed on each side. They'll have pits there. After their drill shot is in, they'll connect their 4-inch pipe that they drilled in to my conduit that was that we stubbed.
So in addition to our engineering and design, we're also a utility locator, and white lining to us is a critical component, and it's also a critical component to the excavator. An excavator or a utility that white lines their proposed installation, I would say is almost guaranteed to get a better, more focused and precise locate that's relevant to the work that they're going to do, versus the locator going out and having to kind of make intelligent or educated guesses about where they really should put their focus. So not only for us is it a time saver, but it also allows our locator to really put more attention to where it's needed.
When you need to find it underground, you really need a Schonstedt magnetic locator. The GA92 XTD model will detect underground ferrous objects up to 10 feet deep, from a pin marker to the largest steel enclosure. With the GA92 XTD, you get single-handed operation and quick and easy locating on the fly. The GA92 XTD can pinpoint precise object location, relative size, and orientation. Schonstedt magnetic locators, making locating easier since 1953.
With South Shore being such a tight street, we are utilizing flaggers today because we have to bring it down to 1 lane because of how tight it actually is. Not the ideal circumstances for digging, but it is the city and you do have to do that sometimes.
So as you can see on this job, traffic is always going to be a big hazard. Basically anywhere we go in the city, our #1 concern is traffic and pedestrians. It's hard to keep your site secure when you got constant flow back and forth every direction. We have flaggers out here today, as you can see. They're keeping things flowing through this job site as best they can, but even still, if somebody's not paying attention, we're basically at the mercy of what their action is. So they need to stop, they need to be paying attention, otherwise, obviously the result could be catastrophic. Being a flagger, a lot of people don't understand. They see somebody standing out there all day and they think that it's an easy job. It's really not an easy job. Having to be engaged for that entire day and be paying attention constantly to what's going on around you. A lot of people see them out there holding a sign, and that's not all it is. They're in constant communication with each other. They're using walkie-talkies to let each other know when they're letting a lane of traffic go. And all of our flaggers are certified through a flaggers class. A lot of them take it through their local union halls, but they have to provide documentation to us before we let them operate a paddle for us. So as you can see, these guys out here doing a great job keeping traffic moving through here, and obviously if they don't pay attention, they're not paying attention, they could run traffic right into each other. So it's a very important job. It's not as easy as everyone would think. We spend a lot of time and resources on training before we send guys out to the field. They have to be aware of all of our expectations, and we do expect a lot from our guys, especially when it comes to underground digging. We got utilities in the ground. Everybody has to be fully aware of the procedure in place. We use the rules to dig by that ComEd's provided us, and that goes a long way. That they say if you follow your rules to dig by, 99.9% of the time you're not going to be found at fault if you have a utility strike. We've empowered our employees to
take the right actions when they're digging in the city, especially. Every bucket we take very carefully, because we know that if we hit something, whether it's marked or unmarked, it's still going to cost the company money, it's still going to slow the job down, it's still going to make us less profitable in the long run. So we've recognized that, and that's why we train our guys, that's why we take it to the next level, because we really want them to avoid every utility strike and keep it rolling. If we can keep the job flowing and everything going smoothly, then obviously that's the way to go.
The biggest safety aspects, no one has X-ray vision in the ground, so we're really reliant on the locators locating correctly and not missing utilities, which is the biggest cause for concern with underground work, is mislocates, which could be anywhere from electrical, gas, fiber optics. There's immediate dangers to us with the electrical and gas for obvious reasons, but then there's also if you knock out a fiber optic, you could be knocking out someone's home. They no longer have phone service to call 911 if needed, or for shutting down someone who absolutely needs that cable line up.
So yeah, per the drawing of the engineers, we saw cut yesterday, and our trench comes out, and as you can see, it goes around a fire hydrant because the drill crew wouldn't be able to drill through there. So that's why they had us come out in the South Shore, and we broke and dug in the road to avoid that hydrant.
Another challenge that we work around when we're doing our designs is that while we've put our clients into the best possible alignment, minimizing restoration and minimizing potential utility conflicts, we also have to try to avoid putting them into construction-intensive activities, such as increasing the depth of excavation to get under things, or actually putting them in a scenario where they have to perform utility support, either of water mains or gas mains, that could involve countersinking I-beams or elaborate straps and things that really just take a lot of time, can take a lot of engineering review, and then a lot of on-site watch and protect support on the behalf of the utility. So those things can range from anything from minimizing restoration. Usually we are going to city light poles that are on sidewalks at intersections, and so we're coming in connection with the ADA ramps, and when we impact those ADA ramps, they can be expensive to replace, and that's a cost that comes back to the communications providers. So what we do is we really try to strategize our designs to minimize that as much as we possibly can.
If the city of Chicago has a project, they'll engineer that project, they'll send it out for review with every utility that's in that street. And it's the utility's responsibility to provide their information to either the water department or the sewer department, depending on the project. And a lot of times the city of Chicago will make private utilities relocate their lines if they're in the running. A lot of that will entail what's called a box of support, and maybe even a watch and protect. A box of support is when, say, the water or sewer is going underneath your existing utility. You have to expose your utility and actually support it, so when they're going underneath, it doesn't break or collapse or anything like that. And then a watch and protect is simply just when you're on site while they're doing the work, you're there in case something happens, so we can be there to take care of the utility that we're protecting. One thing that's an issue is that one company will have what's called an OUC review. You have to have an OUC review in order to get the permit for your drawings. So company A will get OUC review on their job, say a month or two ahead of time of the other company. So that utility is not in the ground when that second company gets their approval. So when we go to do the job, there's already another utility in that existing run. Actually, we just ran into a job up at Sheffield and Diversity that had that exact thing happen, where one company had already taken the running line and nobody knew because it wasn't on our OUC approved prints because it was so new.
Over the last couple of years, and especially now, we're seeing just a rapid increase in the amount of new utilities that are being installed, and even away from our downtown area and out into the neighborhoods. Such that we're all designing and excavating kind of right on top of each other, and that's not only limited to communications, but that's also water main replacements and gas main replacements, and the power utility working through their rehabilitation programs. So the OUC plays a really critical role in bringing us together as a community and facilitating the conversation that we're all having with each other. However, we can't stress enough the amount of coordination that is needed for us to be able to communicate, okay, we're designing at this location, and for another company to be able to receive that information and give back to us what they're doing, that we can start to say, all right, I'm showing B company's proposed facilities and C company's proposed facilities in alignment with ours, so that we are starting to reflect those plans and bring all of that picture together, that the excavators continue to know what to expect when they go out to the field and begin their projects. So many different companies are working quickly to deploy wireless facilities, and that raises a new challenge for us, and that is that as we design fiber and power to targets to mount a new DAS node, we have to consider that a lot of other companies are also trying to get to those same facilities. So the need for coordination is really important. It may mean that we're designing something in parallel with another entity that's designing something else, and we have to coordinate closely with them to try and ensure that our proposed facilities are shown along with their proposed facilities, and that we're not impacting each other. So in other words, we're looking for things on our designs that may not even necessarily exist yet.
So a few extra things that we do and we provide and make available to our guys are the 8:15 morning call every day. Every crew is on the call. We're talking about what we saw the day before. So whether it be a utility hit, a property damage, any kind of personal injuries, we'll go through it, we'll talk about it, we'll analyze it, and we'll just get the word out to the rest of the crew so that they're aware of it, and hopefully they can apply that knowledge to their next day's work, and they'll be able to avoid things like that. So as you guys can see, we just found a pipe, unidentified, completely unmarked. We don't know what it is. It's about a 2-inch steel pipe that we just found in the ground while we were digging. They were digging slowly. They found it, they stopped, they dug down, they identified it, and now they were able to avoid obviously damaging the utility. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and that'll be addressed tomorrow on the morning call. The foreman will usually read that out and just let us know what happened and kind of and what they did to avoid it and how they remedied the situation. We also have goodsafetycatch.com, which we encourage our guys to use. If they don't feel comfortable talking on the call for whatever reason, they can go online to goodsafetycatch.com and submit to a website and basically kind of describe what they saw, what the good catch was. And then we have an incentive program for those guys. We reward them. We give them, some kind of electric conduit swag, whether it be a hoodie or a t-shirt or something they can use in the field.
In one of the trenches that we dug, we did have an unmarked abandoned gas, which it shows it on a print that I have, but it's not located. You just know that there's an abandoned gas somewhere. You don't know if it's going to be in your trench or if it's not going to be in your trench. It was in our trench. We found it. There was no damage to the abandoned gas, but yes, there was an abandoned unmarked gas main. So as a foreman running into unmarked and abandoned gas mains, abandoned old water services that don't get marked, it becomes a big challenge, especially digging in the city with a lot of the ground that you have that's not very good ground, that you're digging through a lot of rock, asphalt, old concrete that shows up in your trenches. And with having all those abandoned lines in there, it makes it very difficult for you to do your job and get your job done efficiently and actually have production and footage, because you want to be safe. You don't want to hit that because you don't know that maybe it isn't abandoned, maybe it's just unmarked and the locator missed it that day because he was having a bad day. But you find so many times and so many time again that it's abandoned, it's dead. You call USIC out and they say no, that's abandoned, it's dead. It happens on a daily basis with any crew that's digging in the city. You come across abandoned and unmarked utilities. I think that there should be something done to identify that there is abandoned utilities in the ground, and maybe if that person who's putting in the new utility takes out the old utility, that could alleviate a lot of problems.
Abandoned utilities is a topic that's been evolving over the last 10 years or so. Utilities in the past always showed their abandoned lines on their atlases. When they would decommission a line, they would basically add a tag to it that says either it's dead or abandoned, and then as they provided those atlases back out for our designs, we would indicate that on our plans. In about the past decade, they've started to change that practice and remove those abandoned indicators from their atlases so that they wouldn't show that facility any longer. Even as of late, they're requesting that we no longer portray abandoned lines or depict them on our designs, and that's really for the purpose of minimizing the potential for confusion in the field that an excavator might have if he questions, is that alive or is that abandoned? We always recommend taking a questioning attitude in the field, whether we believe something to be abandoned or alive, and we believe that adding that abandoned facility on there does represent a clue as to what that pipe may be when they come across it. However, we follow the general wishes of the utility, and we remove those lines from there and make the recommendation that the excavators really continue to have that questioning attitude about the utilities that they're coming across.
Yeah, I'd prefer that they, when you put in something new, you have to remove your old utility, but the only thing that's truly in place is for sanitary sewer. You either have to wreck that out or you have to concrete fill it for safety reasons, sanitary. But I mean, it would make it a whole lot better. These streets in Chicago are starting to get really congested, and the locators don't differentiate between abandoned utilities and new utilities, so it slows us down with the fact that we have to pothole every single one of them, whether or not they're live or not.
This type of construction, this utility type of construction, this fiber optics and small cell, it plays a big part in all of your internet. It's making everything run faster, and everything is getting faster. So this work is continuous because of the broadband is getting faster, and everything is getting more high speed. It's going from 4G to 5G now. So everyone needs to keep updating and updating. It's a big part of technology and how I think the world's running now.
What we've seen in the past is that there weren't many utilities outside of the large, say, big four of AT&T and Peoples Gas and ComEd and water management. There weren't many of the other telecom providers out in the neighborhoods away from the central business district of the city. Now with the increase in the small cell wireless, a lot of those companies are starting to move and place facilities out in those areas, which now means that our job has increased in terms of challenge of identifying where all those utilities are when we're proposing a new directional bore that would be in close proximity to where another provider may have installed their facilities in the past. In terms of the utility congestion in the areas where we do these, and we generally do run into this more in the city than we would in a suburban area, we try to visualize, especially in a directional boring design, all the utility crossings and utilities that might be in parallel to our proposed installation as much as possible in the design. And at that point we would actually indicate an area on the design communicating to the excavator that that's an area that they should test hole for confirmation.
Basically what we got going on is we're trenching all down here and installing fiber optic and power. What that does is basically our cell sites that we install on the street lights or traffic light poles, we install a fiber panel and a power panel. So we bring the fiber and the power up there. Then after the fact we get our equipment up, we will then install our what we call a cell site, which is basically an antenna sending out the signal for cell phones. So for Lollapalooza, obviously it brings in a very large crowd and the cell service gets congested. So what one of the cell phone providers did is they hired us to go in there, put these cell site ups. So every one of their users had service within Lollapalooza and no other providers did. That's the exact same thing we're doing. We're installing fiber optics, but for the most part the fiber optics aren't actually going towards cable or internet to homes. It solely is for providing cell phone service. The areas around here no longer provide cell towers or even putting cells on buildings, which used to be popular too a few years ago. And this is their new method in order to get wider range among their customers. For the most part, the cell service is the ones that are putting out the most work right now, but there still is other fiber providers and companies that everybody's familiar with, Comcast, AT&T, that are also putting everything in the ground as well. We do that work, but this is our primary work here. Currently right now the biggest money savings for a lot of the clients now, and it's a big push, is the boring. 2 years ago, you really didn't see boring in the city of Chicago, up until companies started pushing for it. And now the next big push is that they don't want to restore the ADA panels, which are the corner panels on the intersections. So what they'll have us do is they'll have us bore down the sidewalk, and then instead of trenching through the ADAs, they'll make us do a horseshoe around the ADAs in order to avoid that, which for most people who aren't familiar, adds a lot of 90s to the job, which makes the back end of the job when we're trying to pull in the wire and pull in the ID much more difficult.
So directional boring has typically been discouraged in a lot of parts of the city just due to the fact that damages can occur easier while you're drilling or directional boring than they can in open cut excavating. With the increase in deployment of small cell wireless nodes around the city over the years, a lot of that directional boring has increased as so much of this goes in adjacent to the curb or in the parkway, leading up to poles that are already on the sidewalk or in the parkway space. What that does mean, though, is a higher level of due diligence has to be performed prior to the drilling to identify where those services are, where those utilities are, in addition to the potholing. And that really helps the excavator get out and find those clues before they're on site.
We're able to provide a turnkey project where a lot of companies are not. From putting the pipe in the ground, pulling the fiber, pulling the electrical, installing the poles, and installing the equipment. I mean, it's more of a roller coaster. I mean, it has its swings. It's boom and bust sometimes. It slows down a little bit with, the dark fiber installation or the actual residential commercial, and then other times this is what picks up. Dark fiber is basically where a company will go in, they'll lay the infrastructure, they'll lay in the fiber, and then they'll, after the fact, sell it to somebody who wants it. I guess when people see what we do, they just assume that it's, fiber optics or internet or cable that are actually going to the homes. What they don't really understand is what we're doing is providing them a better cell phone service. Without this, there's really no other opportunity for these companies to provide a better range for these areas that can no longer have those cell towers anymore.
As a company who's spent our career trying to develop the best underground depiction we can that gives the most accurate placement of utilities and tries to give the excavator the best picture possible in how they do their work. It's very critical that we come together now as a group of companies that are all designing at the same time and try to give those excavators and contractors the best picture possible of what they're going to encounter in the field to ensure that they can maintain damage prevention, safety, and just general success of the projects.